So when you hear the word enlightenment, what pops into your head? Is it some flash of cosmic insight? A mystical state that only gurus on mountaintops can reach? Well, today we're going to strip all that away. We're going to look at enlightenment not as some supernatural thing, but as a cognitive process, a totally practical mental skill that any of us can understand, practice, and actually use.
To get us started, let's just talk about fire. I mean, we all know the feeling of fire, right? It's hot, it's bright, it's dazzling. But knowing that feeling is totally different from understanding the mechanism that actually creates the fire. The science of oxidation, fuel, and friction. And believe me, that difference is everything.
Because once you get the mechanism, you're not just waiting around for lightning to strike. You can create fire. You can control it. You can use it to cook your food or stay warm. You move from superstition to skill. And it turns out, the exact same principle applies to those aha moments that happen inside our own minds.
So, what's the mental version of oxidation and fuel? Well, it's a process called the interference mechanism, and it's basically the science behind what feels like pure magic. Let's break down how your mind actually creates that little spark.
Okay, here's the whole idea in a nutshell. Forget about cosmic oneness for just a second. An enlightened moment is simply a cognitive event. It's what happens when two totally separate ideas in your mind, two different frames of reference, suddenly bump into each other, or interfere. And that collision forces your old way of seeing things to just shatter. And in its place, a new, more useful, more integrated meaning is born.
I want you to think of your mind as this giant, sprawling network. No thought or memory or idea just exists on its own, right? A word like fairness, for example, only has meaning because it's connected to this whole web of memories and rules and feelings. Every single thought is like a little node, and its meaning comes entirely from its connections to everything else. And this is where it gets really cool. That aha moment, that creative breakthrough, that little flash of enlightenment. What is it? It's nothing more and nothing less than a new connection being built between two nodes that used to be miles apart in your mental map. A new bridge gets built, a new pathway lights up, and all of a sudden, the entire landscape just looks different. Okay, so that's the theory. It might sound a little abstract, but what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's dive into a case study and see how this interference mechanism plays out in a situation I think we can all relate to, getting a really frustrating email from your boss. All right, so check this out. Let's follow an employee. We'll just call him L. He gets this harsh email, and boom, his default programming kicks in. I've been insulted, I have to fight back, right? His face gets hot, jaw clenches, he's literally about to fire back a nasty defensive email. But then, he does something absolutely crucial. He pauses. For just 90 seconds, he walks away to get a cup of coffee. And in that tiny little gap, two new, completely separate ideas get a chance to interfere. First, he remembers reading that the chemical rush of anger only lasts for about 90 seconds. And second, he starts thinking about his boss's context. He knows his boss is under a ton of pressure from a big client. Suddenly, these two thoughts collide with his anger. The old meaning, I must fight, collapses, and a new one forms. The goal isn't to win, it's to de-escalate. His entire response changes, his boss ends up apologizing later, and the whole situation is transformed. No magic, just a new connection. So you see, what happened with L wasn't just luck. He had the right information floating around in his head, and he created just enough space for it to connect. And here's the most important part. We can all intentionally create the conditions for these mental bridges to form way more often. This is a skill you can actually practice.
Which, of course, brings us to the big practical question. How can you stop waiting for inspiration to strike and start becoming an architect of your own aha moments? How do you build these bridges on purpose?
Well, here are 5 proven ways to do it. Meditation. It's not about emptying your mind. It's about quieting all the background chatter so you can finally hear those faint signals from distant ideas. Having conversations with people who think differently than you do. That forces your mental model to collide with theirs, creating some really valuable friction. Using metaphors, like asking, what if this problem was a garden instead of a war? That builds a temporary bridge to a whole new perspective. Reading way outside your usual field. That's like intentionally importing brand new ways of thinking. And, of course, the 90-second pause. It is the simplest, most powerful tool for just creating enough breathing room for a new connection to form before you just react. But, and this is a big but, there's a critical warning that comes with all this. Once you start getting good at generating these insights, it is so easy to fall into a trap. This brings us to a really important distinction. The goal is to use the fire, not just collect it. You've kind of got two mindsets here. On the one hand, you have the fire worshiper. This person gets addicted to the little dopamine hit of the aha moment itself. They chase that feeling. They collect insights like trophies, but they never actually do anything with them. And then you've got the fire user. This person sees the insight not as the prize, but as the fuel. They take that new understanding and apply it to work better, to understand people more deeply, to act with a little more kindness. For them, it's not about the feeling, it's about the function.
And this, for me, is the most beautiful takeaway of all. We need to reframe what we're aiming for. Stop trying to be someone who collects lightning flashes in a jar. Instead, think of yourself as a quiet craftsman, a carpenter of the mind, patiently and skillfully building sturdy bridges between ideas. That's where the real, lasting work actually gets done.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Just look at your work, your relationships, your biggest challenges. What are two islands of thought, two separate ideas in your life that have never, ever spoken to each other? What new meaning, what new solution might emerge if you just patiently tried to build a bridge between them? Today.